The Federalist is running a story. Why Netflix struggle with talk shows is proof the format is dying. And it talks kind of about Chelsea Handler and how her show, they did some weird things with it. But here's the real premise of this video. So we'll look at this story. We'll look at another story. I believe Americans are sick and tired of Orange Man Bad. And so I was talking to some people recently about the media. And these were like apolitical people. I was out at a park. And they were saying like, man, I'm just so sick of everything. I don't even watch the news anymore. I have had this conversation more than once. I wonder if you, watching this video, have had a similar conversation with someone. I was talking to someone back in my neighborhood in Philly. And they said, you know, I used to watch the news all the time, but now it's just nothing but Trump bad. Oh my God, I get it. And it gets boring after a while. Sure, they get the fervent, crazy anti-Trump people to watch all day, but the regular person is like, man, I'm out of here. And essentially what they've done is they've created a drug that only some people like. Actually, it's a drug for themselves. They become addicted to it. Look at Rachel Maddow. Her ratings skyrocketed. They went up a lot with the Russiagate stuff. What happens when Russiagate falls apart? Her audience is addicted. And if she backs away, she's already lost the core, like the regular people. She can only cater to those crazy people. Chelsea Handler is very, as far as I know, anti-Trump. Look at this. Chelsea Handler went to therapy after Trump's election. So maybe she's not the most, I'm not here to talk about her and her opinions, but just to point out, perhaps the reason Netflix is struggling with their talk shows is not because the format is dying, but because they keep putting the same narrative on TV. Now, I don't know what Chelsea's show is about because I don't pay attention to her show, nor do I watch it. But I do watch Netflix, and people certainly watch Talk News or News Talk or whatever. I'm getting like 35 million, 36 now. So my channel's doing great. Steven Crowder's doing great. Dave Rubin's had some hiccups with YouTube after the latest suggestion fiasco. Challenges to his to the way he structures his show on YouTube. But for the most part, over 1 million subs, not too shabby. There's a lot of people who do this kind of political commentary, and they're doing great. Ben Shapiro is doing really great. I gotta say, maybe the problem isn't talk shows. The problem is Netflix is trying to cater to a saturated and dying market. Well, let's see what they have to say over at The Federalist. They write, it's telling that Netflix's strategy to boost Chelsea ahead of its second season involved deleting 66 past episodes. Nobody seemed to notice, and the show was canceled. Take away 66 episodes of Friends, and there would be riots. The New York Times called attention to the massacre this week in an article on Netflix's talk show problem. One vice president described the move as an easy way for viewers to catch up before the new episodes launched. And that makes sense. The task of picking up a new show is less daunting with fewer episodes. And each episode of a talk show can stand alone. Sort of. It's confirmation of a point the Times raised, which is that talk shows make for an awkward fit with streaming. No, they don't. But why should that be so? Netflix and streaming services in general are not yet functioning as direct replacements for traditional television. We still treat the platform differently. Sure, the option to open Netflix and tune into a regular talk show before bed exists, but people don't seem to want that. Full stop. Not true. Not true at all. I met with someone from Google a few years ago, and they said Netflix is YouTube's biggest competition. Well, I'll tell you what, YouTube, instead of de-ranking suggestions for my channel and for Dave Rubin's channel and other political commentary channels, why don't you recognize that you actually have a monopoly in this space, be it left or right? There are great progressive channels that are getting throttled. Kyle Kulinski, David Pakman, and whether you're a fan or not, Sam Seder. According to data, it looks like they're facing the same throttling as my channel and others. Because this is what YouTube did. This is targeting independent political commentary and news channels. YouTube, you've got something good. Sure enough, who's attacking YouTube? The other media companies that are competing with YouTube. Perhaps you could recognize people like YouTube for this, and it's working, and you actually have a way to compete with Netflix. Netflix can't figure out the format. YouTube does. But I'll tell you this. Even among many of the progressive channels that have taken a hit, they're not completely Orange Man Bad channels, for instance. While they're certainly not fans of Trump, They're not nearly as fervent or crazy. Kyle Kalinske is a great example. He's actually complimented Sargon of Akkad. Wow, look at the mainstream media. They don't. How many hit pieces came out about Sargon following his UKIP campaign? It was all smears nonstop. Well, I'll tell you this. I went to there's a skate park by me, and I've been going there a few times, and I met some people, skateboarders, not your most politically active people, who expressed to me, which shocked me, they just got sick and tired of listening to the orange man bad narrative. That's all the media is. They don't talk about anything else. It's boring, and we get it. And it's a conversation I've had over and over again. The format works. You're here listening to the working format. Ben Shapiro does a daily show and an interview show on Sundays. It works. And it's like an hour long. It's on a podcast. Look at the Joe Rogan podcast. You're going to tell me talk shows don't work and Joe Rogan has one of the top podcasts in the world, creating a bunch of, viral news stories, like the thing I did, having on Alex Jones, having on Elon Musk. Yeah, it clearly works. But why does Joe Rogan need to go on Netflix when he's doing it fine on his own? The format is working. I'll tell you this, Netflix. The problem is Chelsea Handler. Why do I care what she has to say? Get somebody who's thought-provoking, honest, and interesting to have real conversations, perhaps like Joe Rogan. Then you'd see the show work phenomenally well. Let's read a little bit more. They say it's confirmation of a point the Times raised. Oh, we read that. They say, maybe the late night talk show is a habit of older generations. Wrong. People who don't have Netflix and wouldn't watch Michelle Wolf if they did. No, Michelle Wolf was just a crazy person saying crazy things like everybody should get abortions. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but her voice was kind of shrill. Okay? And again, no disrespect on a professional level for Michelle Wolf over her voice, but listen, you can't, you need someone to be able to communicate in a way that you can stomach it and listen to it. And I know it's kind of a low blow to mention her voice, but I think I'm going to have to be honest on this one. For me, it was hard to listen to her because she just has a very shrill voice. And again, not her fault necessarily, but still not good when it comes to talk shows. She also had a segment where she made fun of Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss is worthy of criticism, but she's actually got a rather middle-of-the-road approach to a lot of stories that I absolutely respect. So what happens is regular people who want regular conversations only get Orange Man bad. We don't need it anymore. Listen, I do content and I routinely rag on Trump, but my approach is typically like, oh man, I don't like the guy, but he's not that bad, right? And that's kind of a reasonable stance to take. No, it's not the end of the world. Trump's not that bad. It reminds me of Flecka's talks. I don't know if you guys watch Flecka's. He does man on the street interviews. And he did one where he asked people like, Trump's not that bad, right? Like he's kind of bad, but not that bad. And I'm like, I can agree with that. And the reason why I would say he's not that bad is that there's a lot of things I don't like that he does. I don't necessarily trust a lot of what he does, but he's not nearly as bad as the Orange Man bad show would have you believe. And they're going to give someone a talk show when she has to go to therapy because Trump got elected. I'm sorry, that is the wrong person for a talk show. So is Michelle Wolf. Michelle Wolf got the show in my opinion, because she was extremely offensive at the White House, dinner or whatever, press event. So no, they Federalist, you should get this. You're more of like a right-leaning channel. Chelsea Handler and Michelle Wolf are just Orange Man bad shows. We don't need any more of those. The market is saturated. We have Colbert. We have Jimmy Kimmel. We have John Oliver. We have Trevor Noah. The list, Samantha Bee. The list can go on. You get it. All of late night TV is Orange Man bad. They're all competing with each other. We don't need more. No. In fact, I'll tell you what. If Netflix did a gaming talk show, I bet it'd do well. And the question around whether or not it's doing well or not is also around the cost of production. You could probably get some young dude or woman to talk about gaming and talk with personalities in pop culture, and it would do ridiculously well. I bet you could do a talk show dealing with issues like, I don't know, Game of Thrones or Westworld or whatever show it is people are watching. Stranger Things just came out. You could do a talk show and be like, how many of you just watched Stranger Things? Would probably do fine considering the cost you'd spend on it. What's really happening is that they're talking about pop culture and political commentary, and they're bringing in people who have been traumatized by an election and can't grow up and speak to the adults in the room. Plain and simple. What we see in media is pandering to the children. The people who are so sensitive, they're frail, pink, little, soft skin that you poke them and they go, they can't handle, no calluses, right? You know, when you work hard with your hands get rough. When you play guitar, your fingers get calloused. You become hardened to the harsh realities of life. And that means we can sit here and talk about Trump and why we don't like him, but we're not crybabies. He's not that bad. I think Bill Maher does a relatively decent job for someone who has Trump derangement syndrome. He calls out the whiny babies and says, grow up. Spot on. That show works. Netflix's problem is not the streaming format, and YouTube is proof. Steven Crowder is proof. You want to do well, Netflix? Give Steven Crowder a show. I'd be willing to bet if Netflix gave a show to Steven Crowder, it would do phenomenally well. Hands down. Because Crowder does well. So here's what's interesting. When it comes to streaming format content, you know who is really dominating? There are some progressive channels, but there are a lot of more centrist or right-wing channels. I don't know why it is, but I'll tell you this. If the Young Turks are making a ton of money, and they are, if David Pakman's show is successful, and it is, Kyle Kalinske, Sam Seder, you've got left-wing personalities on streaming platforms that do well. You've got my channel, you've got Crowder, you've got Dave Rubin, you've got Jordan Peterson. You've now got the launching of Brett Weinstein and Jeffrey Miller. You've got intellectual dark web types doing their own YouTube-style talk show podcast. Throw in some interviews. I guarantee you it would work. The problem here is you have bad personalities that no one wants to watch. I'll tell you what, Netflix. Take the Orange Man bad personality, push him aside because nobody wants to hear it anymore. And in my opinion, the only reason it exists on television is because they don't know better. I bet their ratings would do, I bet you, if they replace a late night talk show with someone who is more moderate, who is like, there's stuff to criticize the president about, but he's not that bad, they would do phenomenally better. Way better. Because you'd actually start capturing some of the Trump audience at that. Your ratings would probably go up. But what happens? When they don't chase after the narrative when they chase after the narrative and their ratings go down, they go, we better push harder to the far left, and they keep doing it and it just gets worse. Well, there it is. I'll wrap this up. Stick around. More segments to come in a few minutes, and I will see you shortly.